That's kind of ugly. That's kind of dark. I don't know what to do. Let's go sit on the bed.
So we're not going to start yet. We're just doing a sound check. Marianne, can you hear us? Okay, we cannot hear you.
Maybe if I unmute, you can hear me.
Well, now it's loud and clear. You got it, Brent? Okay. Call meeting to order according to that clock. Mine is still shy of 6, but I like to go with this one. So, Brent?
Yeah, we're ready.
Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Nice to see so many people here this evening. Something on the agenda to draw people. So good to hear. Just to make a note that we do have Marianne Wiesner, who is attending electronically. It should be two-way communication. So I will do my best to peek up there every now and then in case you have a question, Marianne, or a comment. Just wave your hand and I'll draw you in. I don't see anything on the dais, so our agenda is pretty set. We have a consent agenda with 2 items. First item is approval of regular session minutes
Mayor?
from September.
Mayor,
Yes.
could we do a roll call, please?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Roll call. I got jumped right into it.
That's good.
Some days that happens.
Steve Clement,
Yes.
Gary Lillard,
Here.
Ron Bozar,
Here.
David Glabe,
Here.
Nicole Howard,
Here.
Marianne Wiesner,
Here.
Justin Rock.
Here.
Okay. Now we have a consent agenda. 2 items. Regular session minutes from September and ratifying the 2021-22 city manager evaluation. Unless a counselor wishes to pull something from the consent agenda, I will entertain a motion.
I move we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I saw an aye for Marianne.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
All right. Time for public comments. If anyone wishes to make comments or questions or anything for the council on non-agenda related items, please step to the podium. There's a form up there you fill out, and all we need to know is your first name.
My name is Jerry.
And I'm Kayleen.
We live on Willow Street, and we're here to question an ordinance that has been broken and has not been fixed. I live across on Willow Street, and they're putting in 2 houses there, and the lot has never been cultivated before, and the dirt has flown terribly over all to our houses, in our windowsills, and I've contacted Contractors Construction Board in Salem and questioned them and asked them about what we could do about this. And they told me that the city has to solve this problem because it is a city ordinance. And the ordinance is 341, page 4, line 7. And what we are questioning is, where's it at? I know. The plowing, unpermitted burning, disturbing or cultivating of a field, yard, or other plot of land that creates a dust or smoke problem. And we definitely have the dust. Our windowsills are covered with dirt, our cars, our houses. And when they first done this, it's been about 3 months ago, they started this, and the dirt just fogged across there. I talked to the contractor, showed him the dirt in my windows, and he didn't comment on that. And he did say, well, we don't have a water truck, and the city wouldn't like the streets being muddy, so he was aware that this should have been dampened down before he dug, is my opinion. And then we still got more dirt to move. And so we've got to clean our windows and do all this and clean the houses. And it's
Inside and out.
Yes, I imagine, yeah.
definitely, and our cars are full of dirt. And we have pictures of the windowsills that got the dirt laying in on there.
So this was happening over the summer when you had windows open, I'm assuming.
No, you didn't dare open them.
Okay,
No, they were closed.
Okay.
But it's on the window sills.
Right.
And when they work, they drive back really fast, loose dirt flying all the time. There's 2 driveways to the new places there. And when the trains block the street, they whip in and out and make turnarounds and in front of her father's house. And so the dirt flies there. And I understood that they were told to put up cones. I know the city has talked to the contractors, but he's not doing anything that he should. States right there he shouldn't be doing that.
anything else? Because I did want to make a comment or two.
Can't think of it.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We also had information from Kyle Carpenter. I see Mike back there. This seems to me to be both a planning and a public works kind of thing that needs to happen. I think Kyle has spoken to the contractor. Right now, we're missing our ordinance enforcer. So we don't have anybody to go out there and issue any kind of citation or report. I thought what Kyle said was that they were going to put some rock down to minimize the dust, and that they were going to take some actions to prevent additional dust. Unfortunately, that doesn't fix what happened before, and I apologize for that. We all like to go back and change time sometimes, but unfortunately.
Well, they did put gravel down where the cars are whipping in and out.
Okay. I'm pretty sure we've got some action going with this. Give it a day or two, I hope that something can be done. I'm not in a position personally to issue a citation on this, but if there's no remediation of the dust, I think the city should take that action and at least enforce the ordinance that we have in place.
Well, yeah, because it wasn't enforced at all.
Yes, I realize that.
And dust, they can work a lot slower, would even help. I know that when you're digging dirt, you're going to get dust.
Yeah.
But if you work like a little kid playing with a yo-yo, that's bad.
Yeah, right. We're trying to deal with it. So
Okay.
and thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Okay.
Steve, do you know when the code enforcement officers due back?
I do not. Robert?
That's a Gary question. While he's going up there, we have been using Public Works to interact with the contractor in this particular case.
Yes.
I don't have a hard and fast date when she'll be able to return to work. What I can share with you is we have been doing the best we can within resource limitations, both at the police department, within the planning office, public works. You are all aware that we recently undertook a very significant abatement project on T Avenue in La Grande. And really what that is just stretching resources, beyond what we really have at our regular disposal. So, she has significant value, and we have recognized that over the course of the last couple of months in her absence. So I can't give you a hard and fast date. We have an update next week, so we'll see. But I don't know for sure.
I guess I don't want to, I can't direct chief to do something, so I would turn to Robert and say, if there's anything you can do in the immediate future, please see that some type of remediation is done. These people don't deserve to live in a dust cloud. And if there's something that the contractor can do within the means of his business, it should be done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the council on non-agenda related items? Okay.
If you would go
Yes,
up to
you just need to come up here. Thank you.
I have a question. Citation is not going to get the dirt off the inside and outside of the buildings. The damage has already been done. There's not much dirt left. There is some. And it's a very fine, powdery dirt. I mean, you could probably grow potatoes on my windowsill. What's the citation going to do about getting the dirt off? My house is up for sale, and with that dirt on there, but that's beside the point. With Jerry's house, the windowsills are full of dirt. How's that going to get off there? I mean, how are we going to do this? She's over 90 years old, and how are we going to help her get that off?
Again, I don't have the authority to say send Public Works out there to clean things up. Personally, I think the contractor should be held responsible for that. But I don't know that our ordinance goes that far. And the citation is, probably more like this and a small fine. I think a neighborly thing to do would be for him to offer to make some type of cleaning. But I can't compel him to do that. I wish I could.
Got my vote.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? This is one of those times when I wish the mayor had like dictatorial authority, because I would say, fix it. Okay? But I don't, and it pains me. Let me think about something. Thank you for coming this evening. Okay, I don't see anybody else coming to the dais for non-agenda items, so we're going to move into public hearings. This is second reading of an ordinance to establish time, place, and manner restrictions on psilocybin service centers and manufacturing of psilocybin products. The public hearing is open still, and we will, this evening we'll have a reading for the second time. And the rules of order were read in their entirety, mostly a full page, at our last meeting. And with that, I turn it over to Mike and bring us up to date on any changes or summary of where we were.
Yeah, well, the only change that you'll see is in the ordinance itself. I think there's a little typo correction on the heading of the ordinance, but there's no changes. We have not received any comments related to the proposed restrictions, and these model after the marijuana ordinance that we have in our land development code. And I would hope that when we go through our land development code amendment process, then since this is almost a word for word match, that we would just incorporate these into the marijuana section if it's appropriate at that time. And so we'll just kind of, I mean, that's a little ways out. It'll be next spring when we start having that conversation. But if it makes sense at that time, we'll have that conversation and see if folding this into that is the right thing to do, or whether we keep it this way. But it'll have the same impact, same enforcement, same how we implement it is the same. So
Mike, I don't remember the details of the marijuana ordinance. Could you have two of those? Could you have two distribution centers or businesses, two marijuana businesses side by side?
no. So
Okay.
the way there's 1,000-foot separation from a variety of things, and one of those is 1,000 feet from each other.
Okay, so that leads me to the next question. Marijuana, psilocybin, side by side?
That would be right now, yes, but
Okay, so
when we change the code, that will be a conversation that we would need to have as part of the code amendment if we're going to put those two together. Is are they related enough to regulate them from each other?
okay, so I just want to put that out there, that under the possibility that the vote goes, if it goes towards no ban, means these operations could open up. Now, we have a moratorium on marijuana sales and distribution, but who knows? That may get overturned at some future time. So now until you rectify those ordinances, you could have potentially at some point in the future, you can have two side by side.
Yeah.
So,
And the thing with this particular ordinance is that this just establishes the time, place, and manner to address the things that we don't know. So starting in January, if we do not have a ban at that time, then the opportunity for placing these facilities in our community will start then. And that's when, I guess in my mind, if that's what happens, I am hoping that we will learn some positive things rather than negative things, and then we'll have a better idea of how to deal with the time, place, and manner if it's time to change that when we do our code.
Okay.
Or whether this is maybe not restrictive enough. We may need to revisit this after we learn more.
Okay. Any questions from Mike? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Invite public testimony. Anybody would like to speak in favor of this ordinance? Anyone opposed? Neutral? Council discussion. All right, I will close the public hearing then and entertain a motion.
I move that the proposed ordinance establishing time, place, and manner restrictions on psilocybin service centers and the manufacturing of psilocybin products be read for the second time by title only, put to a vote, and adopted.
Second.
Yes, we have a motion and a second. Any conversation, discussion here? Could I have a reading of the ordinance for the second time by title only, please?
An ordinance of the City Council, the City of LaGrande, Union County, Oregon, establishing time, place, and manner restrictions on psilocybin service centers and the manufacture of psilocybin products, and declaring an effective date.
All right. We've got a motion, a reading of the title. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
No, anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Second item of public hearings is a continuation. This is a second reading by title only of the proposed ordinance establishing a temporary moratorium on bed and breakfast inns. The public hearing is still open, and tonight we'll have a second reading. The rules of order were read in their entirety in September. And Mike, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I guess I don't want to spend a whole lot of time other than answering your questions on stuff we talked about last month. But just kind of in general, as a summary, this moratorium only applies to existing dwelling units that would be removed from the housing market and converted to short-term rental. It does not apply to a structure that does not currently exist. It does not apply to a structure that is maybe a garage or an accessory dwelling unit that's not technically a dwelling. It's just an extra space in somebody's backyard, because those are not dwelling units. So this only applies to an existing dwelling unit that's going to be converted. And all of those other scenarios are still valid applications. If somebody comes in tomorrow, assuming you pass this ordinance as proposed, if somebody came in tomorrow with an application for converting a garage or converting part of their basement or something, they want to build a building specifically for a short-term rental, we would accept that application and process it just like we would have any time.
Back up for a second, because you just said anyone who wanted to, say, build a building or a structure for a temporary rental, would that include a new single-family home?
It's not an existing house on the market, so that is if somebody would like to build a single-family home, and I would hope they would apply for the conditional use permit for the bed and breakfast short-term rental before they built, because that might change the dynamics of it a little bit if it's already built. But if they came in advance and that they built it for that purpose, that would be fair game for an application, and they could do that. It would not be subject to the moratorium.
Okay, that clarification is important, I think. All right, anything else?
Okay, so then the next thing that I wanted to address, there was a question that I answered it in an email that you should have in your packet, but there was a question from folks, and I think is really important for those that already have applications in the process. I think all of our applicants are aware, but any applicant that has already submitted an application before 5 o'clock today, in fact, we received one at 4. And so every application that has been submitted before 5 o'clock today will remain valid. It's a legit application that's going to be processed, and it'll all the applications submitted up to today will be considered in November at the Planning Commission. We do have 6 of them on the agenda for, and I don't know how we're going to get through 6 of them, considering it took us an hour and a half to get through one of them last month. So we have 6 of them next Tuesday. And then we have, as of today, now I have 4 for November, in addition to any that might not get completed next week. Those will probably get tabled and pushed to the November agenda.
But they will still be considered.
They're all valid applications that are not subject to the moratorium. They're considered, and they will just go through the process just as if the moratorium didn't exist.
Okay.
And so, you got a question, Gary? I see you
Yeah,
thinking.
go ahead.
Okay, and so those are probably the 2 big items that I had. And then from a justification standpoint, I just had a number of questions as to why we're doing this, and the root issue has to do with housing. So that's the root issue, is we're losing housing to short-term rentals almost as fast as we're gaining them. And right now we're probably are. Right now it might be equal with what I've gotten in the last couple of weeks. We've probably zeroed out for what I can estimate. But so that's the root cause, is we're trying to figure out how to promote housing and not lose housing. So that's the one issue. The other issue is that we just don't have any standards. And so when somebody submits an application, really all we have is a standard that says you need to have a certain number of parking spaces to accommodate this dwelling. And beyond that, there's just a subjective criteria that deals with significant adverse impact of a neighborhood, and there's no definition for that. So how do you define that? That's a subjective thing that you would have to, each of you would have to determine and agree to, that this is significant or not significant. And so every application might not be treated consistently, because your feeling next month might be different from this month, or the council or commission, next year might feel differently than last year. And so it's a real problem. And so that is probably the second main issue. That's a lot of what has caused some grief on the Planning Commission side, and even on staff side, is how do you review an application and issue a fair decision to somebody when you don't have clear standards. And so this moratorium will help us put a pause on that, create those standards so that we can be fair. And just to kind of give you a sneak preview, we had a really long meeting last night as a work session, and we're making a lot of progress. And right now we're looking at finding a way to we actually make the process easier, more administrative in nature, with a checklist. You check the box, say, yes, I have that. Yes, I have that. Here you go. You're golden. Now go do your thing, as opposed to going to the Planning Commission for every application. And so we're exploring that. We're not there yet, but we're exploring that as right now it's our top desired scenario, rather than just requiring a conditional use permit for everybody and then having more stringent requirements. We're trying to figure out how to make it easier and administrative in nature. And so that's the direction that we're headed right now. It's looking really good. And right now we're making a lot of progress on tackling this before the moratorium's in place, in anticipation that you'll support the Planning Commission. And we're actually scheduling to take this up on a Saturday and work through the standards so that we can make sure that we get as much done as we can within this 120-day window and not drag this out. And so anyway, I just wanted to reassure you that we're taking it seriously. The Planning Commission is committed, and that we're looking for solutions that are not going to result in the same thing we have today, but something that's better.
So Mike, just for clarification, the 120 days starts when from this evening?
As soon as you make a decision tonight, it
Okay.
starts immediately if you support the emergency clause that is proposed and recommended.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that people understood that there was that emergency clause in there and that we weren't waiting 30 days for this thing to start. So once we vote tonight, it's on.
But I also like to clarify, it would not be our desire or hope that it would also end and terminate in exactly 120 days, because we're going to be doing everything we can to try to create standards, and then that is a fairly lengthy process to actually get those adopted, and those would likely be adopted by next summer or fall. And that's really our goal. And we have a number of other priorities. Like the university has some requests. I know we have some economic development related things for changing some zoning things. And so we have a pile of things that we're going to be trying to do all at one time and bundle these together to be the most efficient and effective in our code changes. But I just wanted to let you know that it's not our desire and intention is not to end this exactly in 120 days. We will very likely, the Planning Commission will be asking for an extension in order to adopt the standards. And hopefully we'll have the opportunity to have a work session and go through all of that so that we can make sure that we're all on the same page, and that what the direction that we're going is the right direction, and that everybody supports it.
Thank you. Any questions for Mike?
Yeah, I have one. If we pass this tonight, then under the emergency clause, there could be no more applications submitted from this point on, at least until we determine we're ready, or is that incorrect?
It would be no more applications for 120 days.
Right.
And then if you extend it, it would continue to be no more applications, but only for pulling a house off of the existing occupancy,
Right.
list and converting it to a short-term rental.
Okay,
So
I get
all
it.
of the other ones are fair game.
yeah, okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else for Mike? All right, if not, I'm open the dais for public comment or testimony in favor of the moratorium. Anyone opposed? Okay, please. All I need to do is there's a form up there. You can either fill it out before or after, and I just need your name.
Okay, I'm Liberty Avila. I'm on the Planning Commission, and I wasn't able to make it to the work session, so I just wanted to speak in favor of the moratorium. It's not with the intention to forever not have any more Airbnbs, but over the last 2 years, the majority of the work that's come to us has been Airbnb applications at almost an accelerating rate still, and it really means that we don't have much time to delve into future planning if we're spending all of our meetings doing that. Still, the next 2 months meetings will probably involve just Airbnb applications that we already have on the table. And one concern that I wanted to bring up concerning Airbnbs, and one of the reasons that I think it's important, is that we're seeing realtors market our homes as that they would be good for Airbnbs. These are often what would be starter homes for families, 2-bedroom homes, things like that. If we have those homes going to be Airbnbs, often the business plan of the Airbnb and the revenue that you can get from that, that supports a much higher price in our market than does what our wages would support. So I feel like we're really edging folks, I mean, professional people who would normally be able to own homes in our neighborhoods, we're edging people out of the market and that starter step into home ownership. And I think that that's a really important thing to have in our community, to give people that path to home ownership. And so I just wanted to mention that because I'm not sure it's come up at the other sessions and I wasn't able to make the work session.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
Go.
I was not planning on speaking. My name's Wally. My family moved here about 60 days ago. My wife got hired at the hospital, and we're experiencing exactly what this young lady is talking about. It is difficult for us, professional young people. I say young. Just encourage me. For us to find a home. We're trying to make this our home, and we're looking around, and it's a month of my wages for a house payment. And that's me coming to the town, finding a job with degrees and things on my resume. So I just wanted to encourage you as we look, into the future, not necessarily pumping the brakes, but try to find ways to increase entry barriers, but also create revenue streams for the city. So there are opportunities for you guys and gals to develop infrastructure, not just stop. And this is my first meeting. I may be talking out of one side of my mouth, but I've been impressed with what we've got going on so far. So I want to be encouraging that people want to live here. This is an awesome place. We went all over the country in interviews, and we chose Grande. So we're fired up to be here, but we want to be able to live in a home that we can be comfortable in. So
Thank you. Welcome to the community.
yeah, thanks.
Anyone else? Ann? So we're still on in favor.
Yes, we're still on in favor. I'm Ann Morrison, and I'm also on the Planning Commission, and I think that Mike and Liberty have really addressed a lot of the issues. I just want to really emphasize that as a practical matter, we are, as a Planning Commission, are not able to address any other issues because of the numbers of B&B or short-term rental applications that are coming before us. We spent an hour and 45 minutes, our full meeting on one application last month. We have, I think, 6 on the agenda, as Mike said, for our next meeting next week. We have other applications that we're going to be addressing in November, and we are having to schedule extra meetings, evening meetings, Saturday meetings to meet to address other issues that we need to address as well. So just as a practical matter, it would be very helpful for the commission if this were put in place as a temporary matter.
Thank you. Any other testimony in favor? Go ahead, Max.
Hi, I'm Roxy Ogilvie. I am the newest member of the Planning Commission, but I want to talk as a lifelong resident of Grande. And Wally, you inspired me. What I see happening, and the reason I sought to be on the Planning Commission, was a postcard arrived stating that an Airbnb was going to be opened across the street from me. And I thought, well, I don't care. And then I got to thinking about it, and not knowing what that was, I did a little Google search. And then I went to speak with some of the neighbors. And prior to that, it said if you would like the full application, you could obtain it. Well, after I read the full application, I really realized the implications of what it would do to our neighborhood. So I went to the adjoining neighbors who are on the back side of this and on both sides, because the requirement now is that the postcards only be sent to someone within 100 feet of the proposed Airbnb. They said, well, we don't even know what it is. One elderly couple said, well, we don't even pick up our mail. And after I explained what I had found in the application, I urged them to go get an application for themselves and read it. So my concern is these things are coming into our residential neighborhoods. Most neighbors go, what does it do to me, until after the fact. I'd like to see a better way of informing them exactly what the intent of the owner is. I'm also highly concerned with the real estate market. What I see happening with houses, and the one across the street literally was bought by a young lady out of Boise. It was marketed as an Airbnb to make the payments on the house. And the first thing out of her mouth is, well, where's the hiking trail along the river? And I went, we have none. So the marketing, and I love realtors, don't get me wrong, but the marketing techniques are to make the sale. And it's not taking into consideration either the residents nor the buyers. So I would like to have time to study, because that's what we'll be doing, what has happened in other small towns and large towns, but also after looking at the number of family homes we've lost to Airbnbs, that's concerning. Because our primary mission was to increase housing and try to have residents come and live here. And all of a sudden, we're losing ground. We are simply losing ground with existing housing.
Thank you. And that's the 3-minute timer, by the way.
Yeah.
Right under the wire.
Right on the wire. Thank you. I kind of like that one better than the buzz.
For fun? Ding, ding.
Yeah, it's got a ring to it. Sorry, I had to say it. Anyone else like to speak in favor? Anyone opposed to the ban, the moratorium? Anyone neutral? All right. I'm going to just go ahead. Sorry. Opposed or
I'm neutral.
Okay.
I have a couple of concerns. When this lady said that it was a lady from Boise came and bought a house just for an Airbnb. I know other states, other places have, where if you're not from here, if you're not a local person, you can't just come and buy a house to make an Airbnb. I think that should be definitely considered. I'm also concerned about the building new houses. Those can be made into an Airbnb instead of putting them on the market, but you won't take existing other houses and put them on the market for an Airbnb. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think Mike's nuance of that is that they would have to come, they had better come and ask for the conditional use permit first.
Right.
Before they built the house.
Right.
So that when the house was built, they weren't denied the permit.
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
But it'd be nice if we could get regular housing here also. It's nice to have Airbnbs because there's not a lot of really nice places to stay when we have visitors. I mean, I don't stay at the motels myself, but I've tried to help friends, and it's very much lacking in this town as far as a nice place for them to stay. Anyway,
Thank you. Did we get your name? Just quick. We're good?
No, she has.
Yeah, I just need Kimberly, I need you to give us your name real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kimberly Rose.
Thank you. All right, before I rush too fast, anyone else? Yes, you will.
Stood up together at the same time. This is my mother, Kimberly Rose. She's the owner of an Airbnb.
Okay.
And I'm her son, been working diligently on the first property and now a second one. So long story short, I'm neutral because I have, obviously, we're biased in having an Airbnb that we own and operate here in the Grande, Oregon. I come from Boise, Idaho to the Grande, and to speak with the lovely people that have been here just before me, I'm seeing I know the market's not the same, but I can see the housing market. We'll never be buying a house in Boise. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. We pay $1,100 a month in rent, and the house right next to us just sold for $1.5 million. It is a 3-bedroom house, 2-story with a little bit of a backyard. It's just not, it's not doable. So my main concern, I've spoken to Mike about this actually a long time ago, is that the permits, consider this please in the future, in my opinion anyways, the permits really should go with the owner and not the property. That just makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that's, and again, this is something you can address. I'm not sure exactly how, but that just makes sense to me. We've owned this property for 17 years, even though we're not going to be getting rid of it. I mean, as far as future permits are concerned and are considered, it's just something to think about. So, yeah, that's all I got for you.
Good, thank you. And did we get his name?
Dustin Rose.
Thank you, Dustin. While Dustin is filling out the form, anyone else? Neutral? I'll even go back and reverse. Oppose? In favor? All right. Council comments? Or
Can I ask you, Mike?
Yes.
We've heard a couple of testimonies about the amount of time the Planning Commission is spending on B&Bs, but to me, that was a broader term. We're only restricting a subset of potential B&B applications. So can you give me an estimate? How much is this subset going to impact the volume that you're seeing? Is this the bulk of them? Or are you seeing other applications and this is still going to be something obstructing, the work of the Planning Commission?
Well, I don't know if I would consider it as obstructing their work as we move forward. Because I think the moratorium will certainly, take some pressure off. We've had several B&Bs where somebody has, they're renting out the basement of their house. And in fact, we even have some of those in the mix of what the Planning Commission is going to consider next week. As well as in November, we have folks that are adding B&Bs to their property where it was not a residence before in this circumstance. And so they would have been legitimate applications. So what we're getting is a mix of applications that we'll continue to get. But we're also getting, a lot of applications for ones that the moratorium will put the pause on. And I think our recent influx, and you could probably guess our recent influx is because we did the initial public hearing in September and we advertised and got the word out that we're proposing this. And so we got a number of applications as folks were, pushing this deadline and trying to get in under the wire. And I have probably 3 or 4 folks, I can think of at least 2 for sure, that did not submit applications because once they understood what applied in the moratorium, they're going to be coming back probably in the next couple months and submitting because their project is not subject to this, and so they're not in a hurry. But I'm hoping that we'll get through this little hump, and then at that point we'll just get the typical number of applications that might dwindle in like it has the last many years, and maybe we'll have 1 or 2 of these at the most on an agenda. Some months we wouldn't have any, and so we can actually do regular business. It's the folks that come in from for another application. They come in for a variance or they come in for something else. They have to wait through all of these other applications to be considered. And so it's problematic for everybody. So it's not just B&B folks that the Planning Commission looks at. So they're doing all of these other land use reviews and subdivisions and things. And they're also doing all these code amendments that they have been tasked to try to crank out and get ready for spring so that we can get them all adopted. And so it's quite the workload right now.
I saw Marianne was waving her hand, so go ahead, Marianne.
Yes, I was just going to ask Mike, are you not being able to do other things besides a Airbnb during this time process? Like you said, you have 6 of them. Are there other kinds of activities or things that you need to be addressing?
Not at the moment. So other than code amendments, right now, today, that's all I have on the agenda. I don't have any other application. I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at you in your B&B. Or are you in a hotel?
Yes. I'm not in
I'm probably not looking at you because I'm looking at the TV, but no, right now, as far as what's on the Planning Commission's plate right this moment is predominantly only B&B applications and code amendments. Okay. And then, but other months we have had other items on the agenda that, by the time you pile all of these together, it's one more delay and challenge for doing code amendments, because we started these last November and we've made very little progress since about February or March, and because of the number of applications, and it's challenging. And so that's it just kind of is what it is. But
Okay, thank you, Mike.
okay,
And it
thanks.
is a hotel.
It looks like one. I was just teasing you.
All right, any more questions for Mike? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I move that the proposed ordinance declaring an emergency and establishing a temporary moratorium on bed and breakfast inns be read for the second time by title only, put to a vote, and adopted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Before I ask for the reading, any other comments or discussion? All right, could I have a reading of the proposed ordinance for the second time by title only, please?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of LaGrande, Union County, Oregon, establishing a temporary moratorium on bed and breakfast inns and declaring an emergency.
All right, we've got a second, a motion, a second, and a reading. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. You have a no vote from John. Okay, moving on. Thank you. No unfinished business. We have one item of new business, a relatively important element of deciding what to do with $3.1 million. Pretty significant amount of money, and lots of ideas on how to use it. With that, turn it over to City Manager Stroke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's a new business item, but you've actually been working on this for well over a year. The council has done 2 work sessions. You've done an additional work session in virtual town hall. We've provided information to the paper about the various projects that are under consideration. And I think that there's been a great deal of coverage in the paper. There's been a number of people that participated in the virtual town hall. We received some emails. So I think that the word's gotten out there pretty good. I think there've been a couple of 2 or 3 editorials by the Observer that talk to this issue and encouraging people to participate. At your most recent work session, we were asked to put together a resolution that essentially identifies the projects that the council reached consensus on. And to be clear, at a work session, you can reach consensus, but that is not a decision. The decisions are actually made in a regular session. And so the way that the resolution is structured, and this is a bit on purpose, is it identifies the, Mike, can you fix the air conditioner for me, buddy?
Sorry, I can't. It's going through a cycle already. This is planning commission. I apologize.
Okay.
I thought the last one was loud.
So the way the resolution is structured, there's a lot of whereases that kind of talk through the history, but it really comes down to how the $3,023,000 would be allocated if the city council adopts the resolution as presented. Council has the ability to adjust the resolution and make changes, in which case we would just go in and make those adjustments. You would make a motion to adopt the resolution as amended. We'd make those changes, and then the council would ultimately sign that resolution in the coming days. One of the things that you might want to use as a tool if there is debate or discussion about whether or not any of these projects should be changed or added to or things moved around is you could kind of treat them individually and make motions as to whether or not they stay in the resolution or if something gets adjusted, and then following kind of those individual votes circle back to then adopting the resolution either as presented or as amended. And so let me cover kind of what the structure and what this looks like. So based on the consensus, we would be coming back to the council with a prioritized list of the street projects that would be done in sequence. It was very clear that 12th and 16th were the two most important. So the resolution actually captures those as top priorities. We would then bring back to you at your November meeting a list. I didn't bring that this time because I thought it would be presumptuous to have that as an action. One of the things that did come out of the work session is whether or not Spring Avenue between 4th and Washington should be included. Looking at the potential dollars available, the Public Works Director actually felt that should be added because that would be a good bubble project that could be done as opposed to having funding for like a half of a street. But again, the specific projects for streets that would be done in which sequence will be a separate action by the council. So your first priority that you reached consensus on was the east side housing, water, and sewer infrastructure of $1.5 million. I included in the resolution all of the streets that were identified. It does not include the spring, but this is the same list that you had seen before. Assuming that all three of the essentially major projects are funded, which is the water, sewer for the housing piece, street projects, and then the set aside for Fairgrounds, water and sewer, that leaves about $1.3 million available for those street projects. And also in the resolution is, I thought it was a pretty clear intent by the council that any dollars that don't go towards the water and sewer infrastructure or to the fair, depending upon what happens with their other funding, those would be funneled in to the streets in the priority that are identified. So that is the instrument that we would use. I know there was a letter submitted to the city council from the union representing the fire department. They extended their apologies. They intended to be here to speak to that issue, but were not able to. And so essentially what they are asking for is that the city council reconsider and fund the wildland engine, which I believe was $155,000. And I think the council all got a copy of that letter. I won't read it unless you ask me to. But essentially it was a request from the union to invest in the equipment. And they talk about the importance of a good fleet, new equipment, as ability to provide services that also would create an opportunity for some potential overtime options to maybe go and fight fires somewhere else where the city would be paid for the use of that engine and would reimburse for the cost of the firefighters. So there were a number of things that they viewed as positives for making that decision. And so with that, I'll go ahead, and if you have any questions kind of about the structure, great. Otherwise,
Questions for Robert before I invite public comments?
I don't have any questions. I certainly intend to comment at the right time.
I think we all will have something to say. All right, no comments, no questions for Robert. I'll open the podium for public comments. It's wide open on this item. Thoughts on how money should be allocated? Thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any anybody coming to the podium to make comments. So the dais is open for councilor comments, and I see Councilor Lillard chomping at the bit here, so I'll give him first crack.
Well, I have a few things I could say.
Oh, you say as much as you like.
All right. Well, I had spoken before with some concerns about the east side infrastructure. At that time, it was particularly in terms of how much public money we would be using to essentially line the pockets of a relatively few developers. Since then, I've had time to think about it even more, and my position against that particular project has really hardened further. We have a situation where mortgage rates are going through the roof and will probably continue to head in that direction. Being in the process of building a house myself, I can also affirm that there are a lot of supply chain issues right now, labor issues that are making it difficult for contractors, to the point that some of them are, I think, thinking a little bit about whether they want to proceed with projects at this time. It just seems to me that we're proposing to spend about half of this one-time money on a project that is highly speculative. There are a lot of questions that we don't have answered about developers that may actually be interested, what would they propose to do, et cetera, et cetera. So at this time, I really cannot support that particular project. You know, what it reminds me of, I mentioned this to Steve earlier before the meeting, it reminds me of the business park. Back when we spent money to get the infrastructure in, get that thing ready to go. And then the recession of 2008 hit, and it's never really recovered from that. I don't want to see another situation like that one. And this has all the earmarks of it. Too high risk, in my opinion.
So, Robert, I'm going to play off of what Gary has just said. I went back and looked at our housing production strategy plans, and it did mention in there that coordinated infrastructure development in areas where that could be developed for housing would be a pretty good idea in terms of promoting the development of those properties. Are there funds that the city has now that, should a developer for that area come up and say, I'm definitely want to put something, assuming that we don't put the money, we take it out of the ARPA funds and we decide not to do it. Is there money in the city to put the infrastructure in that we're talking about?
So thank you for the question. The city can always use general fund revenues for any purpose. I would not advocate using them for water and sewer, but directly to your question, yes, the city could make a decision to use those dollars to help supplement a project. In terms of the water and sewer specifically, there are a number of ways that we could go about that. We could take our water and sewer reserves and put them towards that project if the council decided that we wanted to do that, recognizing that those are also one-time dollars. And in the case of the water fund specifically, one of the things we've always talked about is making sure we had enough money in the bank that if a well went out, we could go out and build a new one tomorrow. So it would be at the expense of the sewer reserves. Another thing that we could do would be to create a local improvement district funded with those water and sewer reserve funds, where the benefited property would be responsible for paying back that debt. And I haven't really explored that in any detail, but that is a mechanism that sometimes works well. I will tell you a personal experience. I essentially walked into a situation where a former city manager had done what's called a bare ground LID, where they went out and borrowed money to put in water, sewer, street, and acquired a bunch of property. And they put in 9 more holes of golf as part of that project. And what happened was, for a while, the developer continued to pay the debt service on the LID, but then defaulted. And the city attempted to auction the ground and didn't even get a single bid on it. And so the city was on that bare ground LID, was kind of left holding the bag for a number of years, continuing to service that debt so as not to damage the bond rating. So those can be a little bit risky. But yes, there are, long answer to your question, there are other vehicles that could potentially be used to put in this infrastructure.
As is usually happens in council meetings, you have a discussion 1 month and you walk away from it and your brain whirls. And this is an area where my brain started whirling. I advocated very strongly for the idea of this east side infrastructure development because I looked at this as a place for, well, look, free money, sort of free, somebody gave it to us, to put into the potential for development that would bring back returns to the city. Subsequent to that, interest rates have gone up considerably. Existing home sales are dropping. And I'm wondering if this is still a good project to consider.
You know, when you talk about the interest rates, so, you know, back in the 80s, we had 14, 15% interest rates. Those rates came down. So we're not going to be in this economic situation forever that we're in now with interest rates at 7%. This is an investment in our future here to get these homes. And all I've heard tonight, no homes available from the people in this community. If we have we now have a one-time shot at this to put that infrastructure in, and I think it's being very short-sighted not to go along with it.
And John, that's the thing that I'm struggling with, is that, the investment in the tech park, it bombed just because we at least initially, but we've been able to slowly but surely put new businesses in there. I don't look at this investment, an east side infrastructure investment, as just, it's got to fill tomorrow. I'm thinking of this thing as being a 10 to 15 year, 20-year operation.
That's what your forecast for
right.
the housing analysis is.
Right, that you would have.
So that's where you need to put it.
Right. So I got that in my head as we move into this.
Well,
Another thing,
my concern on that score is this being a large amount of one-time money. I think we need to use it on something we can buy and that will stay bought. I still maintain that what's being proposed is highly speculative. We don't know if people will pursue this opportunity or not.
Well, one thing to take in consideration too is where else you're going to build. There is no other open land for the city of LeGrand. So if we don't, I'm not saying to do it, but if we don't put money into projects like this, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot for the future.
Gary, I think what you're also saying then that the housing analysis that you just went through is very highly speculative.
Yeah, to some extent, it is.
Well, not to some extent, entirely.
Yeah.
Mayor, you can't see this, but Nicole's been kind of waving at you to make a comment.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, it's the teacher thing.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna wait to be called on. So I thought about what Gary said at the last meeting quite a bit. I don't think the housing study is necessarily speculative. I think it's based on a whole lot of data, and I think it's a pretty good projection. And we use projections just like, we know it's going to be sunny tomorrow. It's not that speculative. It's going to be sunny. So I think we do need housing. There's definitely a need there. I, though, agree, and that letter we got, I believe it was Mr. Evans, referenced that, to my mind, the narrow benefit of putting this money there. I've said from the outset that I would take every dollar we get from ARPA and I would put it into our streets. There's a reason that anyone who ever wants to run for city council says, I'm going to fix the roads. It's like the only campaign slogan you need in LeGrand. Just make one sign and change the names. We need to fix our roads. And we have $3.2 million here to put into these roads. And this, if we look at the 1.2 here, it only gets us like 4 down the list. I know we need housing, but I think spending the money on the East Side project benefits too few people. And I think we owe this money to the people who live here now, who are suffering under the adverse conditions of our roads today. So I can't support putting money anywhere else but into the streets.
Here, here.
Dave?
I'm in a hard spot on this because I hear what John's saying. I think, the city, I'm all for roads. And I frankly would be happy if all of the money went toward roads. I'm going to walk away and be happy with that decision. But I also wonder if there isn't a missed opportunity here, because housing is a dire need here. And I realize that this is not a short-term thing if we decide to invest in the water sewer infrastructure, but I think, that's been one of the problems. I mean, we're looking at a development right next to where we live, and this was supposed to move, but the problem is that it was so costly for the developer to develop that it hasn't. He had to raise the price on a lot so much to try to compensate for his investment. It's been difficult. I think we have as I talked with other developers, I think they say the same thing. And this is a major impediment to somebody using what is a prime plot of ground that we have, one of the few large tracts, as I'm aware of, Robert, probably simply the most attractive and the one that could probably hold the largest number of houses, depending on how it was developed. I worry about the opportunity cost. And that's why I can also support putting this money toward a longer term investment to alleviate some of what also is an immediate and a long-term need, and a mix of the two. I'm torn, to be honest.
So I'm playing devil's advocate here, or maybe road advocate, I guess. It specifically asked Robert, was there an alternative to funding the East Side infrastructure project? And what I heard from him was, yes, there are options. And those options exist pretty quickly if a developer came forward and said, look, I got this whole place plotted out for 20 houses. I'm ready to roll. I just need the infrastructure.
But if you do it with an LID, like one of the options that he mentioned, it's just going to raise the cost of the house. Okay, so is that then going to be affordable? I mean, the developer's not going to pay for that. He's going to pass it on to the individual who buys the homes. I mean, that's part of his cost.
Right, but
So
what I also heard,
the buyer's going to have to pay for that.
right, what I also heard Robert say is that in sewer and water reserve, and if we look at the budget, and I confess I haven't looked at those details, there's money in those two reserves that could be taken out and put into an infrastructure project like this. And what that does is that runs the risk, okay, we take the money out and all of a sudden we have a well crash, and now we need, how are we going to put that new well in? So you're rolling the dice on that one. And again, I'm just putting stuff out on the table because I've sensed that there is interest in putting all this money into roads. And I can tell you from personal experience, driving around town on the roads that have been repaired in the last 6 months, how glorious it is to ride on a road with no potholes.
Where'd you go? No, I'm kidding.
Well, the one by Dusty Spur, there's one out on what's that road that comes over from Island City through to the park almost, May Lane. Yeah, and so, and I look at those roads and I go, man, some of these projects I'm never going to drive on, but other ones I'm going to use on a regular basis. So,
well, Steve, if I could comment a little more on that particular, the street thing, and I have said this before, having been on this council for 20 years now, I can honestly say that virtually every one of those 20 years, the number one thing I've always heard from citizens is fix these darn roads for 20 years. That's pretty important input right there too, and I think we need to listen to what they're telling us.
Steve, I would also offer this though, as we talk about the prioritization of roads, I would be in favor of removing the fair from consideration here, because I think that money is better prioritized toward roads.
So Robert, and thank you for that, Dave. We have a resolution that includes 3 distinct projects. 1.5 for East Side infrastructure, 1.3 for roads, assuming that 2.5, $250,000 goes to the fair. If we want to change things up should we handle this with separate motions?
Yeah, before I answer that, I do want to make one clarification. The question was, could we figure out ways to fund the water and sewer infrastructure? The piece I did not include is the reason that we have the dollars in those two funds to potentially bring to bear is because we made a decision a few years ago to take a substantial one-time increase in the base rate of water and sewer to address our long-term capital needs and to do it in such a way as to not create a situation where we would see large increases in water rates in response to projects. The cost associated with spending $1.5 million of current reserve will translate to, at some point, those dollars have to be returned back to those reserve funds to fund our existing capital project needs. And so it's not as simple as, well, we built up this revenue, we can put it into that project. So I just want to make very clear that those dollars are in fact intended to and are designed to do our 20-year master plans for water and sewer. So
in other words, they're intended to address needs of our existing infrastructure, not necessarily to be spent for new infrastructure.
well, they are intended to be a combination, because a new well would be part of that, and we might need to do a new well. It goes into what are the projects that we have out 20 years based on growth and those other things that we may or may not need to do. That's what that's based on. And all I'm saying is, if we take $1.5 million and put it into infrastructure there, one of the things that we would have to do, and I don't know off the top of my head if this is a specific project that's anywhere in that hierarchy, but we would at the end of the day have to cover the cost of that through future rates. So, Mayor, to your
Procedural
question, I do think the simplest thing would be to take them one at a time, and maybe you do them in inverse order. The mayor or Councilor Glabe just talked about the fair piece. I don't know if you want to do that one first or the water and sewer one.
So, Marianne, sorry. Thank you, Heather. Go ahead, Marianne.
Well, I was just wondering, according to what I read, we have to have the money spent by 2026, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
We have to identify projects by 2025, correct?
2024.
They have to be
We have to
obligated.
obligate them by 24.
Okay, so could we just hold that money? Because the streets are not going to all get done at one time. What happens in 24? What we might still have, and maybe we'll have nobody who comes forward who wants to build any houses yet. So can we look at it then? I mean, keep the money aside for the sewer and water, but look at streets again in 24. And if nothing has changed, that anybody has come forward that wants to build a project, can we then use it for the streets?
Can I speak to that?
Yes.
So, Marianne, to make sure I understand your question, setting aside the 1.5 and tying it to an actual development opportunity, I would strongly urge not to do that. And I say that for two reasons. One, to get that project designed, engineered, and built by the 2026, we need to start expending money to do that design and get that done now. So we don't have the luxury of being able to do that. And if we don't ultimately build that project, any dollars that we spent on design, we would have to cover outside of ARPA funds. So that's the risk of doing it that way. In terms of, do we have the capacity in this time frame to do all of the street projects? If we said we're going to put it all to streets, yes. Between Public Works doing some of those in-house and contracting them out, I'm very confident that we would be able to spend all those dollars on streets. Long answer to your short question.
Okay, thanks, because that's what I was wondering. Because I'm torn also, and I'm not sure which way to go. but I really do believe we should leave the fair project in there.
Yes, you can make a motion.
I'm going to just try a motion and see how it goes. I move that the proposed, I don't know if you just fix it. I move that the proposed resolution allocating ARPA funding to exclusively use the funds for roads be read by title only, put to a vote, and pass.
That works. I can work with that.
All right.
Second.
So you're
I'm all in on roads.
all in on roads.
So what would happen, and if that vote is successful, then the resolution would be revised to simply allocate all of the funds to roads. We would immediately start work on the design piece for 12th and 16th and bring back to you in November a prioritized list of the roads that we're recommending being funded for the $2 million or the $3 million and change.
I will be so popular. Right, discussion.
Vote. Again, I struggle with this issue because I can go either way, but to me, the decision is easy if we had somebody who we knew was going to develop this. That's an easy decision for me to make. The hard part for me is that this could be like the business park. This could be something where we put it there. I mean, that's private land. They can kind of do what they want with it. And I really, there are how many owners to this? I was trying to look that up. 3, 4? 6 owners, okay? Yes. And parcels of varying sizes within the tract that we have in question, but a lot could happen with those 6 private owners, and we have no control over that. And so I know there's been, Mike, you said interest in the past expressed by at least one individual who this was an impediment, a barrier to them developing this land, was the lack of infrastructure for water and sewer. I wish we had a little more assurance, even something more to go off of than a big we hope. Gosh.
I got one comment. I would vote no, and the only reason why is I am for the infrastructure, but that's not why I'm voting no. The reason why I'd vote no is because of the fair. I think that, helping the fair board out and then the rest of the money going to the streets and roads would be a better approach.
How much was the fair board
250.
proposal again?
$250,000 is the set aside, and that's would be reserved, and then depending upon the outcome of the other funding requests, if they're able to do the project without that participation, at the discretion of the council, those dollars would then roll into the streets.
Is that a friendly amendment, Councilor Rock?
Yes.
Which I would accept.
So wait a second, wait a minute. You don't want the fair money?
No, I do want the fair money is what I'm suggesting.
So whoever made the second would have to amend their second to include.
I would be willing to do that.
So I'm going to raise an issue here, and I know I'm going to look like the bad guy. I think we need restrooms at the fairgrounds too, and I'm all for that. But to me, this is simply an issue of priorities. My personal budget, I've got to look at the things that my family most needs, and I've got to prioritize my money accordingly. There's an opportunity, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, but they might get this money anyway. If we give it to them, there's no way somebody else is going to get it. But there's a chance that they get this money on their own because they have, I think, applications out for grants. Am I mistaken there?
They have requests in for state and federal funding.
Okay. And so if we do this, state and federal isn't going to fund that $250,000. But this is a chance for us to spend the money towards things that, to me, I view as a little higher priority. And that's my opposition to including the fair in this proposal.
One of the reasons why I pushed for the fair is for the tourism. Get the water and sewer back into the fairgrounds to help attract more people to our community, which then will get that money back by tourism.
Right, so we have a motion that says $2.75 million, more or less, to roads, and 250,000 to the fair.
You have a motion. I'm not sure whether or not the person that made the second said that they would amend it.
Yeah, I'm willing to do that.
So it would be the funding to fairs with the reserve gap funding. I'm sorry, the $2+ million for roads with the $250,000 reserved as gap funding for the fair.
And you know, I got to agree with Dave. I mean, I'm not sure that funding the fair is as high a priority as the streets.
I would go with the original one.
Well, should I?
Marianne, thank you, Heather. You have a better view of it than I do.
Thank you, Heather. Gary's would not Gary. I'm sorry. Justin, were you saying to just fund the fair, or to do it under those conditions of only if they don't get the money from the other sources?
I'm just saying how amount. So, I mean, if they can't get the money from the other sources, I guess that would be a good way. But the only problem is, can we do it that way, Robert?
So the way that the resolution is currently structured, it is designed for the fair funding. We would essentially reserve $250,000 that the council would then have to approve that later. So what I would envision occurring, if that remains in the resolution that's ultimately adopted or passed, is you have a work session coming up with the fair board to get additional information. Then we would look at what's happening with the outstanding funding requests. And keep in mind, it's not $250,000 to complete the project. There's quite a gap for the full project. But the dollars would have a fence around them until the council decided to either give them to them, give them a portion of them, or that they're not needed.
So we're looking at another vote down the line, but in the meantime, those monies would be reserved until pending further information, I guess you could say.
I'm good with that.
I could be okay with that.
All right, so there are stipulations about the 250,000.
Yeah, and just to be clear of what, as I understand the motion, the revised amended motion and amended second, the way that the resolution would be approved is we would remove from the project the East Side housing and sewer infrastructure of 1.5 million. Those dollars would be added to the street funding. Paragraph 3 on page 2 would remain as drafted. And then paragraph 4 would remove the reference to the East Side water and sewer infrastructure project.
That aligns with my compromise. I'm happy with.
Very good.
Okay. Can I just make sure?
Go ahead, Marianne. Sorry.
I just want to make sure that I did understand what was said. I know removal of the water and sewer, keep the streets, and then put the fair board, the fair project on the stipulation. If they do not get their other funding, that will be another piece of it. Is that correct?
Let me read exactly what it says about the fair.
Okay.
Union County Fairgrounds Water and Sewer Project. $250,000 shall be reserved and allocated by the City Council contingent upon the outcome of the pending outside funding requests in amount not to exceed $250,000 as gap funding to complete the water and sewer upgrades at the fairground. Any funding provided must be obligated and expended within the ARPA required timeframes.
And you know, that's a fine contingency, but if I'm a state organization looking at funding and I know about that 250, I'm not gonna give you the full amount that you asked for. Or if I'm a federal organization that's looking at funding, I'm not gonna give that 250 because, the city's obligated. Well, they're gonna find out if they're doing their due diligence. It's the state, yeah, well, we don't want it, okay. We don't want to have that conversation openly in public. All right, we have a motion and a second amended. I think we understand what the vote is. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote, please.
Steve Clemens,
No.
Gary Lillard,
Maybe we better clarify what a no and a yes vote is.
I don't support putting money towards the fair.
Okay, gotcha. I will vote yes.
John Bozarth,
No.
David Glabe,
No.
Nicole Howard,
Yes.
Mary Ann Meisner,
Yes.
Justin Rock.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
You know, I gotta hand it to you all. I'm seriously, that was pretty good. You hashed out something. We don't necessarily all agree of what happened, but we hit it just from about every angle that we possibly could. And I think I have a lot of respect for what we did just now. So thank you. Wow. We're now moving into the waning part of the meeting, and I see Commissioner Scarfo standing up. Union County Commissioner update.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Councilor. I only have a couple updates. Everything's been kind of slow lately due to the upcoming election. Everyone's kind of waiting. The state agencies are unsure about their positions, so the new governor is going to be put in January 1st, and so a lot of things aren't really happening in that world. I did talk to our clerk. This is her last election cycle. Well, she'll be missed. Robin Church. She's done a fantastic job. But Lisa's coming on board, and she'll be fantastic as well. She told me that the ballots will be mailed October 19th, so you'll be receiving them about the 21st, 22nd, which is also EOU homecoming. So please join in the festivities. There's a bunch of them. The other thing too is I've brought this up many times, and I actually brought show and tell. Hey, Marianne, if you want to look at that, there you go.
You got wrong camera.
Somebody, at least a couple people got it.
Wrong camera, Matt. That way, man.
I know. So you're going to get this in the mail, and it looks like junk mail. Please do not throw it away. It really does look like junk mail, and I found some in the garbage and whatnot. This is the broadband. We're trying to get a survey done with our current broadband in Union County. So supposedly we're supposed to be receiving $1 billion from the federal government to support our broadband needs in many different fashions. So it's super simple. You either go to this website that's on here. I had a caller today say, I don't feel comfortable about going to said website about giving out information to the property. Well, there's a number here also. So if you don't want to get on your website and find out how fast your broadband is, then call this number right here.
Is it easy to give the website and the call number?
I can do it right now. I know how to read. www.fasterinternetoregon.org.
Faster Internet.
And so what this does, it asks you for a disclaimer. You have to get by that. And then it does a broadband speed test. And then it puts you on a map saying you're this much speed. In this location, and you could do it more than once. So as you're aware that there's high peaks, low peaks. I'm trying to talk very technical here. I'm not, I'm trying to sound smart. So if you have very good broadband in like lunchtime, but horrible at 5 o'clock when everybody's using it, do it multiple times a day. It'll create more data for us. I have not called the number yet. I do not know how that works, but
and that number is?
Yeah, there we go. 541-426-7500. So this is anticipation of this $1 billion coming. We're trying to get ahead of the game. So when the applications come out saying, all right, Union County,
what are your woes? What, where do you have bad broadband, no broadband, or is broadband too expensive? Hopefully we could get some of that funding here in Union County.
So if people access the website somehow or other, the phone, it's going to build a map.
Correct. Yes.
Of internet speed connections around the county.
Yeah, and I think it's like green, yellow, red.
Yeah.
And then the black is like none.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, it's just going to give us data on certain sections, and
Right.
so. Yeah.
So the phone
And don't quote me on the colors either.
Phone number is dial-up 56K modem, right? Sorry.
That's old school there.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But so yes, once again, that's what it looks like. You brought it here, throwing it away.
It came a while ago.
Yes, and if you do have any questions, well, some people are now getting them right now.
Okay.
But any questions, please call me 541-963-1001, and I'll try to get you all this information. And if there's any other questions for me, any other topics, I am all yours.
Questions for Commissioner Scarfo? We missed you last month.
Yes. What? No. I've been at so many.
No,
I think it was here. It was 2 months ago.
Was it? It was. Anyway.
Hey, thank you for missing me. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right. Staff comments?
All right, Mr. Mayor, councilors. So really early warning, we're into fall. So we got a few things coming up, and we'll only meet one more time in between now and then. So remember, we have community-wide leaf pickup coming in November. And we will be getting the snow plows ready, because if the rest of the year plays out like this year, we're going to get a lot of snow. So no, we're ready for that. The other reason I came up was the one big update I know everybody's waiting for. We've sent the agreements over to the contractor. He's working through all the insurance requirements, and we anticipate work to begin on Geckler probably in the next 3 weeks. So it will be done before the snow flies. So it's on its way. That's all I got for today.
Thanks, Kyle. Chief Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. Quick announcement. Coming up Saturday, October 29th, we have drug take-back scheduled for the fall. So we do that at Safeway, and that's going to be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. again on the 29th of this month, which is a Saturday. And as a plug that I can't resist, you can drop those off anytime at a number of locations here in the Grande, but the lobby of the police department is open 24 hours a day. So bring your unwanted, unneeded, expired bills and get rid of them safely.
Good, thank you.
That's all I have, unless anyone has questions for me.
I'll be asking you to come up after during council comment.
Okay, I'll be leaving here in just a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I just have a quick announcement to make, and I don't want to steal Councilor Meisner's thunder here, but as you noticed, she's not with us tonight. She's joining us from Klamath Falls, where she's at the Oregon Main Street annual conference. And I would just like to take a moment and recognize and congratulate Ms. Meisner on this evening's recognition as Oregon's Main Street Leadership Award that she released.
Hey. Sweet.
Nice.
Congratulations. You deserve it. You're muted.
Thank you. I also, if I can make a comment right along with that, I also have the one for Brickyard Lanes that was said the outstanding special project. And they got one today. They were not able to attend. And the local got a Main Street Award today, and Gus and Karen and Randy and his wife Rhonda were there. And that was for the adaptive reuse of a building.
Oh, nice. Very good.
So 3 of us were able to get an award at Main Street today.
Congratulations. So, and I share that just as good news. I think it's really important. Part of my job is to serve on the board for the Main Street program. And I just feel like, you know, the ability to pick up some recognition for several great projects and an amazing volunteer, great news. And happy to share that with council.
Thank you, Timothy. Any other staff comments? City manager?
Thank you. I was just doing some quick math. In the resolution, the street project amount will be $2,773,872. And I just want to express my appreciation for the work that the council put into trying to figure out the best way to use these dollars for the community, and really appreciated the discussion that you did have. And we'll get busy on the November agenda for the priority order of those streets for your consideration. And that's all I wanted to touch on. Thank you.
All right, very good. Council comments? Justin?
I'm good.
Marianne, comments?
Just sorry you had to unmute me. I don't have any more. It was a nice day here in Klamath Falls.
Good. And thank you for representing Main Street here. Appreciate it.
And I was able to pick up the one for Brickyard because they were not able to come at the last minute.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Gary?
Yeah, I attended the senior council meeting last Wednesday. Wasn't an awful lot really to share to the city. Did bring them up to speed on the ARPA discussion and the B&B moratorium, which they were very much in favor of. I think pretty much in favor of the street idea as well. There was one person that brought up idea of funding a little bit for the warming station, which I think might have gotten some early interest, but it didn't come through. So but that was about it for that.
Okay, good. Anything else?
No.
Nicole?
Just a quick thanks to the Planning Commission, just realizing how much work you guys have been doing. And if it's at all possible, if there's a tiny little contingency fund somewhere that could get them bagels and coffee on a Saturday, for their meeting, I think
Mike, hint, hint.
we should do that. That's a lot for volunteers to be doing, and I appreciate it.
We'll feed them on Saturday.
Right on.
Did I hear the city manager's buying?
Yeah, I've got a
that's what
budget
he
line
said.
for that. It was like
I was gonna
$12
say-
in it, but we could do that.
Hit me up. I'll donate my monthly stipend. How about that? Dave? John? All right, I have several things. The first thing is proclamation. I never know when to read these things, so I figured this would be a good one. And this is proclamation for Extra Mile Day. Whereas Grande, Oregon is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Grande, Oregon is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, families, friends, and communities. And Merriman Meisner is a classic example of this. And whereas Grande, Oregon is a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and lift up fellow members of their community. And whereas Grande, Oregon acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 550 extra mile cities in America and is proud to support Extra Mile Day on November 1st, 2021. Now, therefore, I, Steve Clements, Mayor of Grande, do hereby proclaim November 1st, 2022 to be Extra Mile Day. And I urge each person in the community to take time on this day to not only go the extra mile in his or her life, but to also acknowledge all those who are inspirational in their efforts and commitment to make their organization, family, community, and county a world a better place. And I think it would be really cool if we could get a group of people to clean that woman's house. And I'll come with you, right? We'll clean their house because somebody should. All right? Get a hold of me afterwards, okay? Chief Bell, would you please come to the podium? And if the council is not aware of, they should be, Measure 110, which Oregon voters passed 2020?
It went into effect February 1st, 2021.
Okay. That measure basically legalizes any drug. So you could be in possession of heroin, you could be in possession of methamphetamines, and law enforcement officers have very little that they can do. Soon, we're told, there will be state money coming to our communities to help fund services to that people who are caught with drugs can go to for treatment. In my opinion, this whole thing has been a mess for a lot of reasons. But I've asked Chief Bell if he could give us a brief summary of some of the impacts that 110 has had on our community. And this request was inspired by an email I got today from Andrew Cutler, who brought up a letter that the City of Ontario Council wrote and sent to the governor. Ontario's in a bit of a different situation than we are because they're adjacent to Idaho, and they're getting an influx of people into Ontario that are using because they can do it legally in state. So, Chief, would give us an idea of what's going on, please.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and councilors, thanks for the question. I didn't know this was going to happen tonight, but lucky for you all, as your chief of police, I've been living this since February of 2021. And so our agency and public safety in general in our community has most certainly been impacted. Our community and people have been impacted by this. To clarify something that you said, Mr. Mayor, there has been no legalization of drugs.
Thank you.
The word that we should be using is decriminalization.
Okay.
So for what the state of Oregon speaks to as user amounts of what we oftentimes see as illicit or street drugs, we have been impacted. We have, I spoke to you earlier this year about a very real crisis that we have in not only our community, but really everywhere else. And I don't think that there's anyone that has not heard about fentanyl at this point in time, and the prevalence and how easily accessible that is in our very own community. And I don't know if you're aware, but just recently now what we're seeing is fentanyl early on was being pressed into pills to look like a prescription opioid, M30s, blue in color. Now it's being distributed in colors all over the rainbow, and it literally looks like Skittle type colors, presumably more appealing to children and young people. I started serving our community as a police officer in the early 1990s. Mr. Mayor, though, when I first started working here, we had not even seen methamphetamine on the streets of La Grande. I've seen a lot of the cycles, through drug labs, and then when we outlawed ephedrine in terms of over-the-counter, those impacts. The prevalence of drugs in our community is greater today than throughout my nearly 30-year career here as a police officer. The promise with ballot measure 110, and I talked to many, many people in our community, a lot of voters weren't really sure what they were going to get out of that. The promise was readily accessible treatment for people who are in the throes of addiction. That's needed, always has been. There is data that is very easily accessible that suggests that Oregon, the state of Oregon, is amongst the highest in addiction rates. The state of Oregon is also amongst the worst in accessible treatment. So the promise from ballot measure 110 was that there would be many treatment options available for people who needed that, considering drug addiction as a public health issue rather than a criminal issue. What I'm telling you as your chief of police, the flawed thinking in that is that people in the throes of addiction are interested and or willing to seek out treatment. That's just not happening. The law went into effect the 1st of February 2021. We're approaching the 2-year mark. There's not a whole lot of options available. Nothing's really changed other than we have lots of people who are addicted to drugs. We have people who are overdosing on drugs and dying. And I'll give you just one example that I can't resist. Recently, within the last few weeks, we had a young adult person, female, in the throes of addiction. There is some behavioral health issues, attempt to light her hair on fire on Adams Avenue in front of Goss Motors. You guys know from communications we've had and probably other experiences how the behavioral health issues in the state of Oregon and in our own community are stressing our resources. We haven't, as a state, we have not been dealing with behavioral health issues adequately either. So when we throw in the addition of all the substance abuse, we have a mess on our hands. I sit on the board of directors for the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police. Last week, I was in Salem in a meeting talking about our priorities to try to impact some upcoming legislation. We need a fix. We need some changes to ballot measure 110 as we know it, because the people of our state, the people of our community are being negatively impacted. I'm very concerned that the addiction is not something that you can just, have, and then, when treatment's available, if you choose it, it's not a thing. I'm concerned, Mr. Mayor, that we may be losing an entire generation of people to addiction before we get this right. And to me, it's not acceptable. So I'm open to questions if you have them. Hopefully that touches on what you were looking for.
Yeah,
I didn't come prepared with a whole lot of other data.
I realize that, and I'm sorry I
No,
called you out on
no
the spot.
apology needed. I will share with you specific to local data. It's hard to give you hard numbers because when ballot measure 110 went into effect, then that essentially causes us, we don't have data on the number of people that are charged with a criminal offense for drug possession, because see, that data's gone. So it's a little bit of misleading if you say, hey, Chief, what has happened to your case numbers related to, well, we don't have many. What I can tell you is the decriminalization, there's still a criminal law effect. If you can have 39 fentanyl pills in your pocket, and just a half of one of those we've had people overdose and die on, but you can have up to 39 of those in your pocket, and the recourse through our justice system right now is you're going to get a citation from the police officer, $100 bail. Your options are to call a number and just receive information on treatment options, or go to court. What we're seeing, not just locally, but statewide, is people don't go to court. Nothing happens. Word travels, so it really, for all intents and purposes, although it's decriminalized, there's still that element there. It really has legalized for all intents and purposes. And some might say, well, the distribution, the manufacture of those crime and the penalties associated with, they still exist. That's accurate, but the mechanism to investigate and enforce those crimes is really gone, because the users are not willing to give us information related to the distribution. So anyway, sorry for the bleak report, but that's just the truth, folks.
It is, and I asked Chief to comment on this because I wondered if the council would like to consider some type of resolution or letter that we would put together over the next month and then vote on in November. And if you're supportive of that, I would work with Chief, or we could. I don't think we can borrow the Ontario letter because it's very specific to their community. But I think we should put something together and let the governor know. And I think the gubernatorial candidates should know what we're thinking and what effect the communities this measure has had on communities.
I would certainly support. I mean, we've had this kind of thing going on with a lot of issues with the psilocybin thing that we considered earlier this evening. Same thing. they make this possible, but then they haven't followed through with rules, recommendations, money. We see this all the time.
So if I have a consensus, I think I can do this without a motion. Chief and I work on something, a very brief letter, a statement on the city's position in our discontent with this measure. And we could bring it forward in November and vote on it. Does that sound all right? Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Last thing, and then we'll adjourn the meeting. Came to my attention that the old Miller Hardware building is there's a group in town that'd like to use it for something. And the rumor is that I actually stepped in and stopped that process. Okay? I can't do that. Mayor does not have the authority to tell someone that they cannot use a piece of property for a use that they want. Planning can. And I'm not blaming Mike, but I'm saying that every piece of property is zoned a particular way. And you can't just come into that property and use it for anything that you want. You have to conform to the existing zoning. And if you don't want to conform with existing zoning, you have a big process to go through. I still told you earlier, I wished I was, a mayor with dictatorial powers, but I don't. I have to do volunteer stuff. All right. This is one of those things I cannot change. And wherever that rumor is coming from, that person doesn't know what the role of the mayor is, nor the laws of the city. And so I just wanted to clarify that for anybody out there who might be listening and believing that I have that kind of control. So with that, I'm going to adjourn our regular session meeting, and I'm going to give Brent 5 minutes, probably 10, because there's some people here who may want to get up and move around. We're going to adjourn and come back immediately at 8 o'clock to our urban renewal district meeting. So I'm adjourning.
Me. It was Mike.
Okay, I'm called to order regular session of the Urban Renewal District. Let me get myself oriented. Ask for roll call, please.
Steve Clemens,
Here.
Gary Lillard,
Here?
John Bozar,
Here.
David Glabe,
Here.
Nicole Howard, Marianne Meisner,
Here.
Justin Rock.
Here.
All right, just a note, Marianne Meisner is participating electronically, and that the Urban Renewal Agency will meet in an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602H to consult with our counsel concerning legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation, and that will happen immediately after regular session, and we won't be coming back. So as soon as I adjourn us from regular session, you can all go home. So with that, we have a consent agenda with one item, and that is regular session minutes from August 3rd. I'll entertain a motion on that.
I move that they be accepted as presented.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Public comments? Anyone like to address the agency on non-agenda related items? How vacant it got. Okay, so I'm moving on from public comment, no public hearings, no unfinished business. One item of new business, and that is to receive an economic development update from our economic development director, Timothy Bishop. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given the hour, I will try to be succinct.
Thank you.
The agency did ask in April when we approved the economic development strategy to come back in October with an update. I have prepared that for you in your packets. In the name of brevity, I won't go through and read it line by line tonight. But I will kind of go through and kind of highlight a couple of things. What we did here was basically we tried to go through the goals set out in the economic development plan, demonstrate to you that we have made some significant progress in a couple of those areas, and at least some progress in all of those goals. As many of you know, you were at the last work session, ensuring the urban renewal agency programs are achieving their goals. We are working on that. We currently just last week had an agency workshop talking about some direction and kind of long-term vision for urban renewal. We've made some revisions in July to the call for projects policy. We are looking at some minor tweaks again for 2022 based on feedback. We've seated several new URAC agency members, URAC committee members have done training with the committee and are working with city manager and agency director to schedule training for URAC and the agency in the fall. So we are making some progress there, continuing to kind of evaluate and adjust as we roll along to make sure that the work of the agency is still aligned with those directions and effectively implementing the goals of the agency. Business recruitment efforts, this is one of those things that's a little more challenging because, as we know, much of the work that I do on behalf of the Economic Development Office is done in a fair amount of confidence. So we often can't speak about projects till they are coming to fruition. But there are some things that I can share with you. We do continue to respond to all of the leads that come our way, including a number of those that come through Business Oregon. With Business Oregon, we tend to look at those, review those, and try to respond to those that we qualify for. I will say that quite frequently we get a lot of those leads that come to us and we simply cannot meet the minimum requirement. Good example of that, a lead that came through today, looked interesting. The tire recycling production plant, they pelletize recycled tires. They need a building, pre-existing building, 300,000 square feet. That one could be tough for us, but they also require 5 megawatts of power per month. So when we talk to HOTEC, whose entire OTEC service area is 25 megawatts annually, we kind of fall out of the running pretty quick. And so the reality is that while we tend to monitor and respond when appropriate, many of the Business Oregon leads are simply, we're there to monitor, we got them, something may fall through the cracks that would be appropriate, and we'd be able to respond to. But our response rate on those is pretty low. That's not due to lack of effort, it's due to the criteria that come with many of those projects. So we have followed up, started developing a list of our own leads. One of those that I was working on and finishing up today is based on the strategy that we were talking about, recreation technology, small manufacturing. We are working with several of our business owners locally who are involved in outdoor rec and small-scale manufacturing, putting together a list of potential businesses that might fit that category that could be recruited, that would either be complementary, supplement their supply chain, would be like-sized, like skill set type of businesses. There's about 14 businesses on that list. And we'll start reaching out to those as we move through the fall, doing some of our other travels, kind of fitting some of those initial contacts into some other travel that we have scheduled for this fall. So starting to, at least now, we've got a list we can start contacting and qualifying. We also are working on 2 active leads. We heard the business park mentioned numerous times tonight. I do want to update you that we do have 2 active leads who are looking at space at the business park. One of those was a response generated lead that we got literally almost a year ago, probably about the 3rd or 4th day that I was on the job. The other is a self-initiated lead that we were able to generate in March and have been working with since. So there are some leads that have some potential opportunity to move forward there. And then we have 2 leads already that have inquired about opportunities regarding call for projects. So there are some local development opportunities looking at 2023 already. Yes.
Timothy, is that traded sector incentive? Is that the 200,000?
Yes.
Okay.
And one of those projects that is looking at the business park looks like it would also potentially be eligible for that incentive. So there are some movements there. Much of our effort, as we outlined in the strategy and the plan, has really focused on business retention. We have actually been working with 2 significant retention efforts. 2 of those have been referred to Oregon, Business Oregon, for a couple of specific funding opportunities that would be relevant to those retention efforts. We're continuing to work closely on a monthly basis with the chamber. We're meeting with Donna Beveridge in that group from the county as well. We've also brought in OTEC, chamber, and EOVA because some of that business retention is really related to work where OTEC is becoming more involved in some business retention resources, and EOVA and the chamber from a tourism business development retention capacity. So kind of building that local coalition has been really important. The big project coming out of that is coming up on October 20th. That's a Thursday. We will be coordinating with that group a small business summit at the Armory conference facility, inviting a lot of our small business and entrepreneur service providers to come and really talk briefly about services that are available, and inviting those small businesses that we've been involved in working with to attend that, as well as working with their own mailing list. The 2 mailing lists that we will be working with specifically related to that is the entrepreneur list that we've developed through the work we're doing on the entrepreneur ecosystem work funded by our Business Oregon grant as part of the ROI. Now I'm going to space the acronym, but it's the Business Oregon grant. And as part of that, we have been tracking new business registrations within the city of LeGrand and have a list of 280 businesses that have registered, new businesses that have registered within the city of LeGrand in the last 18 months. So that list will be part of the invitation list and part of our outreach to that group. The Main Street program has also been a part of that. We're working, of course, with the projects that have applied for this year's call for projects, making sure they get through that process. And then, of course, go forward with Main Street being a central business district zone, that vitality. I think a couple of quick updates there as Main Street is kind of going through its own reorganization. As you know, we are working on the search for a new executive director. I can update there that we did do a call for resumes, job posting for that. I feel very positive. We got 10 resumes submitted. 4 of those were strong enough that the selection committee will be advancing those to interviews. And I feel very positive that those are qualified candidates. We weren't scraping the barrel to fill the position, but we truly did get 4 really strong candidates who would be strong enough to warrant interviewing. So I'm optimistic that that's good news on our behalf. Those interviews are scheduled for the 19th of October. And so my hope is that we'll be able to move pretty quickly and be fully staffed again. So simultaneously, we are working with the board there to rebuild the board. During COVID and for assorted reasons, we've had some atrophy on the board and currently have 5 vacant positions. As of this afternoon, I can share that we have 4 very qualified candidates who are willing to step forward and fill those positions. So we're waiting for one more. We have 3 other candidates that the committee is talking to fill that remaining nomination for the board. So with any luck, we will be able to come into the end of October. We have board training scheduled with Sherry Stewart coming up in October 27th, and we will invite our slate of nominees as well as our existing board to that board training. So we're hopeful that we end the year with a full board, new executive director, and really move into 2023 with a re-energized and refocused energy at the Main Street level. So a lot of progress has been made there. The facade program continues to be administered through the Main Street program. And then the other big projects that we're working on, a couple of things there, again, are the grant program that is funding the PTI and Rural Sustainable Systems program that is doing the Brownfield project. All of those Brownfield assessment projects are happening in the downtown, including a cluster of those that are predominantly along Jefferson Street. So we are priming the pump, creating some dialogue with some property owners that we anticipate will lead to some redevelopment opportunities along Jefferson Street. The other big success story there, Main Street was able to secure the $200,000 grant to support the redevelopment of the Bonin Camp building through the Main Street Grant Program. And then we talked briefly tonight about the recent recognition of 2 of our downtown projects, which were also agency-funded projects, and that's the Brickyard Lanes and the Local. I would also share that we also received word that the Putnam building, the Liberty Theater Cafe building, also was recognized with the Jamiro Award from Restore Oregon. And then just this week, we also received word that the Liberty Theater, which we have contributed and supported through Urban Renewal, also received a $565,000 grant through federal ARPA funds. So I share that because I think when we talk about the success of these projects, it is exciting to see that the agency is really funding a variety of projects. And yes, there are some small scale projects that we anticipate cumulatively will have large impact. But it's also encouraging when we see those large scale projects receiving statewide recognition for that agency investment as well. And I think that leads to a marketing and our final discussion about sort of marketing, how are we marketing our efforts? And when we can hang our hat on the fact that through our work, we are producing award-winning projects in our community, that not only helps us attract additional investment, but it also helps us raise the bar when we're talking to folks about using agency funds like Call for Projects. And we can point to, these are the caliber of projects that we really want to support. How do we attract and leverage those kinds of investments? So I think that's my quick sort of succinct recap. There is more detail in the summary and the report. I'm happy to take a few minutes of your time and answer questions. Yes.
Okay, Gary.
Yeah, the Liberty grant will pretty much allow them to finish it up, won't it?
So in speaking with Ashley O'Toole, he's optimistic that that should be the grant that puts them pretty close to being over the, if not across the finish line, pretty darn close. So he's anticipating that that is the home run that moves that project to completion.
Any other questions for Timothy? And I'll just say this very quickly and then we can move on. How do you get half of this done in a week? There's a lot here. You're doing a lot of things. And I'm assuming
irons in the fire.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that they come up and then they go away, and another one comes up, and you can. Thank you. It's good to see economic development moving forward.
Thank you. Other questions from any other council members?
Don't think so.
Great job.
Yep.
All right. Well, I will be succinct and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. No other new business, District Manager?
I'm good, thank you.
John? Dave?
No.
Mary Ann? We're adjourned in regular session. We will reconvene in executive session in the upstairs conference room.
Thank you.
And if Casey wants to bring